and myself. Let's start from the beginning.
I am Richard Stanley Kerr, and I was born February 24th, 1935, the Methodist Hospital in Los Angeles. My sister Carolyn was born 1927. My dad was Paul Willis Kerr. My dad had a brother and two sisters. Brother was Phil, and I'm named after Phil, I think. Philip Stanley Kerr. I'm named Richard Stanley Kerr, whether I wanted to or not. My mom's name was Helen Marie Kelsey, and so she became Helen Marie Kelsey Kerr. Was born in or around Jamestown, New York in, I believe, 1902. When we took that trip to Washington, D.C. and went to the archives and looked up the information from them, which was in the form of letters written by their widows asking the government for compensation for their lives lost in the war. Two of the boys were killed in the war, and the third brother lived out after the war and died later. We actually found their gravestones of the two in the Alexandria Cemetery. My grandfather was born in Lerwick, Scotland, so he might have been, I don't know if he was an infant, because I don't know the timeline or how old he was when they all moved, but they ended up in Canada and then came down to the U.S., and we still have relatives in Canada. Grandma Rose Crater was from Ohio. Crater became Mrs. Kerr, and then after my dad was born and their stint in Colorado, they had moved to L.A. and opened a mission downtown L.A. After that, Rose Kerr went to Hawaii. She became a minister, and she went to Hawaii in an orphanage to take care of that. And while she was doing that, I guess Grandpa stayed around L.A. and did various things, probably worked and did some mission work. Barbara Leslie had lost her husband at sea, and then Samuel Kerr married Barbara Leslie.
My name is Donna Lynn Sahlberg. I was born in Wichita, Kansas on November 15th, 1935. My mother's name is Marguerite Bell. She was born January 29th, 1905 in Oklahoma City. My father's name is Elmer Wesley Sahlberg. He was born July 7th, 1907 in Walla Walla, Washington. He and my mother unfortunately divorced when I was an infant, and I never knew him growing up. Grandpa was my father. He acted as my father and was very close. My mother was the oldest, and then Vivian, her sister, was born about a year and a half later. And then a year and a half later, Cecil was born. And then my mother was 10 when Stuart was born. So he was a lot younger than the others. I guess he was kind of a surprise baby, a beautiful baby that my family just loved him. Well, when he was 17, he was interested in guns, in ammunition and bullets. He kind of experimented making bullets of his own, things like that. And one day he was at the kitchen window, I think, and he had a gun that he didn't realize there was a bullet in it, and he accidentally shot himself, and no one was home at the time. He managed to crawl. We learned this later. He crawled in as far as the living room and collapsed. And Grandpa, my grandfather, Finch, when he came home, Stuart was lying on the floor and had bled to death. If someone had been home, he could have been saved, I think. And the sad thing was that the newspapers got a hold of it and ran with it with a story Stuart had a little girlfriend that he was seeing occasionally, and I think she was a neighbor too. And so they made up this story and splattered it all over the newspapers that he had committed suicide because of a little rift with his girlfriend. Even had her picture in there and superimposed Stuart's picture on it. It was tragic for the family. And of course, on more investigation and hearing the truth, they printed a retraction of that story because it was simply an accident. That's all it was. That happened in May of 1932, and 2 weeks later, my brother was born, and they named him Stuart after our uncle Stuart. Stuart Finch was my brother's middle name. So that's a very sad story about what happened in our family. The thing I heard about him was that he was just a real sweet boy. His teacher used to put him in the front, in a seat in the front of the class. This is what my grandma told me. And she had him there because he was a comfort to her. My grandparents on my mother's side, Rose Bell Kirchner. Well, Kirchner was my grandma's maiden name. And she was born April 23rd, 1886 in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And she was a homemaker. And my grandfather's name was Guy Finch. And he was born March 11th, 1882. He owned a tire shop. He owned a confectioner business, they called it, and he sold chili and taffy. And he bought and sold income property later in his life. Their parents, I think, were born in this country in Midwest.
My dad would call me. Usually, he called me Butch, and so one time he got mixed up with Rich because he called me Rich. Sometimes he made a colloquialism out of it. I got older. Dick was that nickname. I started it or what, but in school probably that's where I got it. Now, we lived right across the street from the elementary school I went to. And I have that one picture standing on the porch or the front of the school. And I was probably 5. They probably took it when I started kindergarten there. My dad had purchased 2 lots together on the other side of the school on the next street over. He subsequently built our house there that I really grew up in. Linwood Junior High School became a high school. So I stayed on there and have to go to another school. Oh, I think probably the one that stands out is when I was running around the neighborhood with the other kids and playing, and I got in this water along the railroad tracks, a little mud puddle, and I stepped on something, and it made a pretty good cut in my foot. There was a vacant lot. We used to dig trenches in the lot, and then put boards or anything we could find over it to make tunnels. And we had our little secret places there. That was fun. My mom had befriended a single mom at church who had a little boy. His name was Gary, I think. Her name was Ethel. And they would come over once in a while, and sometimes unannounced. And my mom would say, oh, here they are again. Anyway, one particular time they came, and Mom and Ethel were busy talking, and so Gary and I, we were running around and went upstairs and into my mom's and dad's bedroom because I was going to show him something real cool, which was a little box, a cardboard box with a bunch of handguns in an assortment of different kinds. And I got it down. My dad, being chief of police, got all these unclaimed things, he could bring home if he wanted. Rummaged through the guns, and we're looking at them, and I found this strange little, looked like a pen. It had a slot on the side with a thing sticking out, and so I didn't know what it was. I was pulling on it, and I couldn't make it work, so I went over to the bed, and the edge of the bed where it was wood there, I tried to stick that thing on there to push down on it to make it do what it was supposed to do. Well, it slipped off, and it fired. It was a little tear gas gun. A small one, and it fired kind of toward my face because I was standing over it, and the whole place filled up with smoke. And I said, hey, we better go in the bathroom and wash this out of our eyes. And of course, that made it worse. And then we went back downstairs, and Mom called Dad, and he came over. We were all sitting on the curb out there with all the doors and windows open to let that smoke out. And I have a feeling that my dad got a big kick out of that. We went with Dr. Brown and his wife to Yellowstone. That would be the 5 of us. We had what was called a teardrop trailer that resembles a teardrop. And it has the back door like a trunk on a car that opens up with a little burner stove there, and just one door on the side and a mattress inside. So it wasn't very big. And then there was a little canvas kind of a thing like your awning that went on the side of it. And we had those old army cots that we put up. And so Dr. Brown and his wife slept in the teardrop trailer, and my mom and dad and I slept on those cots in that little canvas tent thing that goes on the side. And so we did that, and I remember him fishing off a bridge. The ones I remember are like Christmas mostly, because a lot of the family came over, and in those days there was some music going on, because I remember, I think one of my relatives, Beatty, I think she played the violin, and one of the relatives of my mom's played the piano, so I kind of remember them kind of playing some music. That would have to be Patsy, which was the 9-month-old filly. We were living on Josephine Street there, and the backyard was pretty good size, and so we kept her there in the backyard. And my dad kind of built a little corral kind of a thing to keep her in, so she would go over the whole yard. And at that time, she wasn't old enough so that I could ride. So for about a year, we just kept her that way. I think, as I remember, I would have been in the 5th grade at that time. So I would have been about 8 or 9, I guess. And that's the time when I met Fred. Fred lived on the street behind us. And he would go in his backyard, climb over the fence, which was kind of diagonal to our property, and then he'd jump over into our yard and we'd play. And so we started our summers drawing pictures.
He was a famous trumpet man from out Chicago.
I remember too much about Truman and the end of the war stuff. I remember during the war, all the stuff in high school we used to do. We used to go collect newspapers and metal, anything, and bring it to the school for the war effort. But I think that's where we brought the stuff. But the whole town would go around collecting stuff and bring it for the war effort. But the thing I remember politic-wise, the first thing I remember was Eisenhower, and I guess it was the election of Eisenhower, because they had this little round button that says, "I like Ike." But I really remember when Roosevelt died, because there was so many people upset. You remember people just, crying, and I don't know, he was such a more bigger than life person, I guess, but that stands out in my mind quite a bit.
My family all wanted me to be called Donna Lynn. In fact, they called me Donna Linny.
Donna Linny, Donna Linny.
I gave up on that because I thought it would be too hard to make everybody call me Donna Lynn. The story is a pretty famous one and actually made the papers as a bouncing baby girl, because I think I was about somewhere between 18 months and 2 years. And we lived at a home that Grandpa had built in Wichita, Kansas. I was in an upper story window. Somehow I crawled out of that window and fell out of the upper story window onto kind of a part of the roof, came down from there, kind of at a slant. And then I fell on the grass below. And it scared whatever there was to scare out of my folks. I don't remember a thing about it. I remember my Aunt Vivian heard me crying. She came out, and of course they wanted to check and see if I was okay, and except for my brain, I think I was okay. I've always wondered if my brain didn't get a little damaged there. They probably took me to the doctor just to see if I was okay. But the Lord had something to do with that, because there was a cement driveway immediately below this roof that I fell down on. And if I had fallen directly onto that, that would have been a different story. I probably wouldn't be here today. Grandpa was going to take my brother and me to so that we could go sledding down a little slope. We had some things to do in the morning, so we didn't get there till about afternoon, and by that time the snow had melted. Aww. My first broken arm was when I was 5, and I was taking ballet and acrobats. I slipped doing some cartwheels. There's just a little scar there in my left arm. When I was still 8, Grandma and Grandpa bought me a little collie puppy. And I came home from school one day, and this little puppy was sitting on the porch. And I said, "Oh, is he mine?" He said, "Yes, but it's a girl." You can guess what I named her.
Lassie.
Ah, you guessed it. We had her for 11 years. Grandma started me on piano at the age of 8. Grandma was very much into arts and things like that, and I continued them when I moved to Los Angeles. At the age of 8, Grandma and Grandpa moved to Los Angeles to be with the other members of the family there. And Grandpa bought a house a few miles east of Los Angeles. We couldn't part with Lassie, so we brought her with us. And she used to help me to skate up and down. We kind of lived on our street was on a slope, so I'd get on my roller skates, and Lassie would get a hold of a stick, and I'd take the other end, and she'd pull me along. Like 2 broken arms.
Ouch!
So I was at the age of 9 when we moved to LA, and I began going to a large church called Angelus Temple. We only lived 2 blocks away, and I could walk over there. Amy Semple McPherson was the pastor and founder of that church.
Dedicated unto the cause of interdenominational and worldwide evangelism. So read the cornerstone of Amy Semple McPherson's mammoth 5,300-seat Angelus Temple when it opened its doors on January 1st, 1923. It was no accident that the founder of the Foursquare Church was so focused on the Great Commission. Amy threw off the comforts of home and set off with her family to evangelize America at a time when a woman preacher was almost unheard of, and in some quarters, even unthinkable.
But every day and every night, Jesus spoke to my soul, "Now will you go? Preach, preach, preach the word of God."
Despite the obstacles, Amy would not give up. She had answered the call of God, and it would soon take Amy and her family to the booming city of Los Angeles. She arrived with nothing but a gospel car, as she called it, $100 and a tambourine. Sister McPherson, as she was often called, grew in popularity and in the number of people her ministry was impacting for God. Every Sunday, more than 16,000 people jammed into services at Angelus Temple to hear the evangelist proclaim the gospel.
That meeting started off a half an hour before church with a 50-piece or more silver band. Then you got two big choirs, one on each side, and a song service. They would almost make your hair stand on it. I mean, that thing would just rock.
Aimee Semple McPherson used everything at her disposal to tell people about Jesus. She published her own magazine, staged elaborate musicals, and produced scores of illustrated sermons to dramatize gospel truths. In 1924, she started radio station KFSG, and with a signal that could be heard across North America and even in Australia, soon her radio converts were more numerous than those who heard her in person.
At that time, Audrey Meyer was directing choirs there. She became very famous for directing choirs from the piano. I had a little friend. Her name was Mary Brown. She was in the teenage choir. Well, I wasn't a teenager yet, but Mary asked Audrey if I could sing in it. Audrey said yes. She would bend the rules a little bit. So I think it was about 10 when I actually became a member of the teenage choir, and Audrey had all these wonderful arrangements. She made the arrangements herself, and she started me singing, and I did some solos, and that was my first experience at singing. From there, I started taking singing lessons. Bill Kerr, they had a radio station there at that church called KFSG. He would broadcast radio broadcasts from that church. And Vivian would minister and witness to me. So I went forward and accepted the Lord when I was 9 at Angelus Temple. I was 9 when the war ended. When I first moved to Los Angeles, before Grandma and Grandpa came out, I came out and stayed in what was called a boarding home with my mother and my brother. These were not exactly happy memories. It was only about a year's time, I think, when I was about 9. I remember wartime having blackouts, and in the room there where we stayed, Mother would have to pull the shades down and cover any lamps with a heavy cloth, so that, because there was a warning there where there might have been bombs coming down, in other words. I remember when the war ended, though, and everybody was so excited, and we saw pictures of sailors kissing the nurses in the street.
I was around 10, and I got into the Cub Scouts. I was only in the Cub Scouts for a short time because at that time, the 4-H club was getting real popular around Linwood. My project, Raising the Horse. Being in the 4-H club, I participated in the big celebration they had every year, where all the 4-H clubs in the state of California got together in Sacramento. And so I was able to be a representative from our club. I did get a blue ribbon on one of my fillies, which was a offspring of Patsy. We had her bred to a purebred Arabian stallion. I had a job, after school job. It was at the cabinet shop. It was called Atlantic Cabinet Company in Linwood. And I'd ride my bicycle from school to the job, and my job was to clean up all the sawdust. Then I'd run over and ride the horse till dark. Then I'd go home. It was amazing. My folks never said, "Where have you been?" They knew where I was, I guess. That was my routine. Oh, of course, that's an easy one. I wanted to be a cowboy. Yeah, my ambition really was with animals at that point. I hadn't really thought about any other kind of vocation because I was too young for that anyway. And then drawing. We did a lot of drawing of pictures on my folks' patio in the backyard there. Fred and I had quite a time because we were really getting into the horse thing, and Patsy was about close to 2 years old, and so my dad took her somewhere and had her broke, quote, unquote, and that meant that she was ready to ride. So,
Okay.
so I had gotten a saddle and all the stuff, and I started riding, and that let Fred out in the cold. So we would ride double. What we would do is from my house down to the railroad track, the Santa Ana line they called it, went from LA to Santa Ana. It was about 2 blocks. So we would ride the horse down there and then ride all the way to the LA. We would end up doing stunts, which was kind of interesting. We would, like what we saw in the movies, you know, we'd run and jump on the horse, or I'd ride by and pick Fred up off the ground, you know, standing there, you know, like they see in the movies.
Fred Fellows went on to become a famous cowboy artist. He won gold and silver medals in all media, from painting, sculpture, watercolor, and drawing. And in 2007, he received the Cowboy Artist of America Award for the best overall exhibition. His paintings have been featured in numerous magazines, as well as his paintings and sculptures are on display in numerous museums, universities, and historical societies.
The time I was a freshman, a sophomore, I think it was. My folks were trying to get me into music of some kind, and they had given me piano lessons, I guess, for just a very short time when I was probably 8 or 9. They tried to give me trumpet lessons, and it was actually a cornet that I was playing. And I accidentally dropped it and broke it, and so they said, well, that's enough of that. And I don't know what possessed them, but they got me that bass fiddle. I don't remember any talk about it or anything. Got me the bass fiddle. There was a music department at school. There was an instructor there, and he tried to give me a few lessons, but that didn't work either. I don't know what the deal was with that. Yeah, lousy teachers. And in the meantime, I had been listening to Les Paul and Mary Cord, and their recordings were real popular. And so what I did was I just got a few of those records and put them on and tried to pick out the bass part on it, learn it myself, which I did. And then a little bit later, I was a junior. Then I met Dave Schuster, because another kid I grew up with in elementary school, Lincoln, was a friend of Dave's, and Dave played the guitar, of course. So Lincoln got us together, the three of us. Lincoln played the guitar too. I started playing, and we were so enthusiastic about listening to those Les Paul records that we started trying to imitate some of the songs and everything. And so that's the way we started. And then, of course, later that year, probably my junior year, I heard the George Shearing Quintet somewhere, maybe on the radio or something, and I really flipped out off of that one. So I started buying his albums. There were MGM Microgroove records, they were called. There's just 4 songs on a side. My folks had a really good player. It was a combination TV, phonograph, and radio. And so I was able to put those records on and come home from school and play, you know, and try and learn those things. That took a while. That's the way I got started in that. And then, see, that helped me get into the harmony chorus, because at least I knew a little bit about what I was doing. My Uncle Phil had a special talent for writing music. He wrote a lot of songs, which he published himself.
Flying through a storm from Winnipeg to Minneapolis one day, I got to thinking that men will put faith in everything. Faith in planes, faith in trains, faith in other people, faith in things. But isn't it strange that so many people will not have faith in God? Flying over the mountains that loom high.
He would go around to churches to hold meetings, and then he would write songs during the service. He would ask people to call out a song title, and he would ask for a key, and then he would play or make up a song, start playing piano, and then he had his own songs he would sing, and then a short 15-minute little sermonette, and that was his ministry. So in subsequent years, when I kind of remember going to some of the meetings like that when I was probably 8 or 9, he started the Monday night musicals in Pasadena. And that was an interesting time, because he would be able to get a lot of Hollywood musicians that were fairly famous and that were in the Hollywood Christian group. He formed it so that people in Hollywood would have a group. and Bible studies, and he would have them come over on the Monday night musicals and perform, which was quite a deal. And I really took notice of all those things when I started playing the bass in my junior year.
I love you, a bushel and a peck, a bushel and a peck, and a hug around the neck.
Here's Sonny, my big brother, and my cousin, Tanya Rose, and me, about around 1946, enjoying some watermelon at the Los Angeles location of our courts where we lived. Tanya Rose was my only sister that I had. I think the main thing probably was my music and Girl Scouts. And he had a lot of activities that I had to perform, so I enjoyed that. But the thing that was most important to me in junior high school was the orchestra called Little Symphony, and that's when I started playing the flute in 7th grade, so that I could end up in 9th grade or 8th grade in the Little Symphony, which was a 125-piece orchestra. And it was quite an accomplishment to be in that orchestra, and it really was quite exceptional for that age group. And it was directed by Vernon Leidig, and I'll never forget him. I was singing Audrey Meyer's choral arrangements for a year or two, and at one occasion she asked me if I would sing along with the adult choir. I believe they had performance at the Hollywood Bowl. And so anyway, I sang along that, and I did a high C at the end, which wasn't actually written in, but Audrey heard me sing it, and she made quite a bit out of that. And so she had me singing a lot of high notes from then on in some of her choral arrangements. Well, the director, Vernon Leidig, was supposed to go to Hollywood and be the director at the high school. So several of us who were seniors transferred over to Hollywood. I went to the Hollywood Bowl with a young fella that was in high school. He had an old classic car, like a Model A or something, and he drove me to the Hollywood Bowl in it. Well, what happened was he parked the car, we went to a concert at the Hollywood Bowl, and when we came out, the car was gone. So that was pretty embarrassing. What happened was his father came and got it. Evidently took it without asking or something.
Love and marriage go together.
I had been wanting to get in the harmony chorus when I was a junior in high school. So she talked to Phil and kind of arranged for Dave and I to go up and meet Audrey and kind of play along and see how it went. and that's how I got into the harmony chorus. When we were full-fledged members, I began to notice a few people in the harmony chorus, and one of them was this blonde in the double trio that sang there. And so Audrey had a good reputation for putting couples together, playing Cupid, you know. So we started just casual friendship. The next tour that came up, Dave and I were able to get in on, and so we had a lot of more opportunity to make friends with the other members, and so that's how I got friendly with Donna Lynn Solberg.
As I was singing, I could look straight across over there and see this bass player, kind of attracted to him, of course.
Of course.
So when he wanted to talk to me, well, I was certainly willing to talk to him. So that's kind of how we first met.
And that's how music literally brought them together.
It was Valentine's Day, and he brought me home, and we were saying goodnight. And
those half-hour good nights?
Yeah, and Dad said...
You wouldn't want to marry me, would you?
He said, yes, I would. Of course, we've been thinking about it.
That surprised me. I said, oh, no, now what do I do?
That was one of Dad's most embarrassing moments.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dad, at that time, went and joined the Army.
Yeah, I thought, well, since Mom was going to spend 2 years, going to the junior college.
Supposedly,
yeah. Then I might as well go into the service and spend 2 years there instead of just all the gagging around, working and stuff. I went and volunteered for the draft, which meant that I would only need to spend 2 years in the Army instead of 3. And so off to the Army I went.
I was taking some stenography at Glendale College and learning shorthand, but then I decided that really wasn't what I wanted to make a career at, so we decided to go ahead with our November wedding.
Yeah, that was a fast one because she could quit going to school, but I couldn't quit being in the Army. It was a different deal than ordinary. We had a musical to begin with, and then the wedding was at the end of the musical.
The choir, the harmony chorus, sang one of Phil Kerr's wedding compositions called As the Years Go By.
When we got married, I was on my graduation for basic training. Yeah.
Remember, you got poison oak?
I got poison oak.
And so when on our wedding day, he had poison oak.
My ear stuck out like an elephant.
Yeah, they were swollen.
Yeah, I had poison oak on me.
It was itching all over.
Oh.
So there was actually 3 of us on the honeymoon. It was Mom and me and a bottle of calamine lotion. We headed on up to Yosemite.
We did a little cabin, and there was snow and little animals.
I had, I think, 14 days altogether leave. I had to get back, so I went back on the bus.
I was staying with my friend out there in Hollywood.
I had been staying in barracks with the other guys, and so I continued doing that, but Mom and I were talking back and forth, writing and everything about her coming up there sometime, and then we would get an apartment and stay there. Mm-hmm. I still had, almost the 2 years left. Eventually, Mom came up, moved up there, and we lived in a couple of different apartments there in San Francisco.
We have to tell them about the first apartment. We had what they called a studio apartment. So you went into the house, and you had to go on a stairway, went down to this studio apartment, which was behind the garage. So it was just a little tiny place and didn't have much in the way of heating. We had they called it Perfection. It was a big, like a camp stove, lantern type of thing. It was about 3 feet tall, and when you lit it, it made black smoke come out.
Kerosene heater,
and black smoke emitted out of it, and it got into your nose and eyes.
Yeah, turned your nose black.
So, in the kitchen, which was really a little hallway to the backyard where the clothesline was, and the landlady would run her clothes, her basket of clothes through basically our kitchen, which was just a hallway, and she'd run through there with her basket of clothes on a Saturday morning or Friday or whatever and say, "Yoo-hoo, I'm coming through."
Sherry Lynn Kerr was born in
January
23rd,
1957.
Yeah, at the Letterman Army Hospital in the Presidio, San Francisco. And the Adjutant General signed a certificate that she's an honorary member of the 6th Army. It takes about, I think it was a month to process out of the service.
But I moved back to live with the folks to save money for us.
Yeah. So Mom took Sherry and drove back down to L.A. just a little before I got out.
Our first place was another upstairs apartment, and that's where Susan was born. There's Susan Marguerite, and that was May 19th, 1958.
My dad came up with the idea that he would give us $1,000 toward our house. So we'd been renting up to then. We found a house in Westminster, so we signed a contract to buy that house for $10,500.
Catherine Marie Kerr was born in 1962, in September. A little lady came down from about 3 doors down. Her name was Joanne Craig. She had come to the door to ask me what radio station I was listening to, because she had heard me singing and playing the old crank organ that I had at the time. She came down to see the new baby and admire how beautiful the new baby was. And that's how we met Joanne and Merrill Craig, who became lifelong friends.
It was a heart condition. I've always understood it was a slow heart and it gave out, but it was a sudden passing. Carolyn and my dad and I, we all got together and talked about things, because Dad wasn't doing too well either.
He was depressed.
He was depressed, and we all agreed that it would be good if he had somebody. So he agreed too that we could move in. So we were there for about a year.
And that's me holding Kathy. You were about less than a year old, about 4 or 5 months old.
And that can't be me.
And that's Daddy.
That's me.
That's Richard. And
Yep, and Susan swinging.
So we had a swing set there, and the girls loved playing in the backyard.
Yeah, it's a big backyard.
Throwing the ball. And I was expecting Alita then. Fourth child, Alita Rose Kerr. She was born October 26th, 1963. President Kennedy was assassinated that same year on our anniversary.
That was interesting, because we remember standing in the kitchen dining area watching the whole thing on TV about him being assassinated, and we actually saw the assassination of Oswald, because they had it live on TV when he was brought out of that famous scene where he was brought out of the courthouse and that guy shot him.
Yeah.
And we were watching that live, so that was really something. My dad started corresponding with Verdi.
I don't remember.
I don't remember her last name. Do you?
No. Anyway, her name was Verdi.
Yeah, Verdi. An old family friend, and she lived in Fallbrook, California, down near Oceanside. My dad told us that he was going to get married. He decided that he was going to go ahead and move down, sell the house, I guess, and move down to Fallbrook when they got married. We decided to go ahead and move back to Westminster. We had known a couple in the Harmony Chorus named Chuck and Lawyer Dayton, and he was opening up a pool store. He hired me, and I started training for that. The three of us from his pool store, and then become certified swimming pool service technicians. The distributor I went to pick up pool supplies, there was a notice on the bulletin board that 2 firemen were selling their pool route that they were doing on off-duty time. Because I already had the 2 years experience in the business, I was able to buy that. That's how I got started in the pool business.
Green Acres is the place to be. Farm living is the life for me. Land spreading out so far and wide.
We enjoyed living what we thought was rural life. People were friendly. It was out in the little house we rented. It was really quite a dump when you look back. But we were happy there. We had an acre of land, and part of the time we had a horse. We had our dogs. We had
chickens.
We had chickens for a while.
We even had weeder geese for a while.
Weeder geese. And we attended the Assembly of God Church and sang there.
And I played the bass.
We had good times. We didn't know how poor we were.
No. That's the best view of steel.
Oh, a happy day. Oh, a happy day. When Jesus wore. Oh, when he wore. When Jesus wore.
A young girl.
There's Joanne.
And Wobblet.
Oh, a happy day.
Robert.
Now they're looking for Easter eggs.
Happy day. When Jesus wore.
Yeah.
Oh, when he wore.
I was sorry for him because he couldn't find any eggs. That's because Richard took them all.
The big trees. Oh,
Oops.
now.
There's the sliding.
Oh, gosh, somebody left the banana peels. Oh, no.
Oh, when he wore. When Jesus wore. Happy day. Oh, a happy day. When Jesus wore. Oh, when he wore. When Jesus wore. Wash my sins away, Lord. Oh, it's a happy day.
Then we moved out to the ranch.
There's the Sam when we first got her.
Oh, a happy day. Oh, a happy day. When Jesus wore. Oh, when he wore. When Jesus wore. He washed my sins away.
tops. We could see the house from up there.
Yeah, postage stamp
Hiking
size.
in the
That was
hills.
it, yeah.
She was a personality plus.
Yeah. I don't know. There they go,
Running, running, running.
heading for the hills.
Picking wildflowers. I got jobs, clerical jobs at a bank, Bible bookstore. I worked for a dentist for a while, but I didn't really enjoy that kind of work. My heart was really in the music. I did quite a bit of musicals, performed at the college, directed choirs, churches, and I had a small singing group of girls. The 8 Rays of Sunshine. And you played the piano.
6 at first, and then it became 8.
6, and then it became 8. That was amazing.
Well, in 1978, my daughter Kathy was able to get tickets to the George Shearing duo that was coming in the community concert series at Porterville. And so Mom and I went to it, and it was a great concert. It was a great bass player, and I was kind of glued to him during the whole time. But anyway, after the concert, we went backstage, and George was there and the bass player, and so we got to talk to him a little bit. That was really great. And I told him about learning from his records. That was a great time. Well, you kids all sent us to Hawaii. That was quite a deal. The
Yep.
little dinner you put on.
Yeah, that was wonderful of you kids.
It was great.
I had always wished that I could have gotten a degree in music, so finally I decided to do that. I got an Associate of Arts degree of 50, which made me very happy. So after I went and got a degree, I decided that I would go into teaching more or less full time. So I taught voice, piano, and flute. When some of the courses that I took involved professors that were definitely evolutionists. And of course, you had to answer questions like, the beginning of our world and millions of years, and everything just happened by chance and all that. And it just infuriated me, and I found out that there was a organization called Institute for Creation Research that had professors that would go to different cities and do debates. So I contacted them, and Dwayne Gish, that he oftentimes did this on a regular basis.
I want to introduce Dr. Dwayne Gish. He is, I guess, an authority on this subject of creation science and evolution. He is the author of several books, including one called The Challenge of the Fossil Record. Will you please welcome Dr. Dwayne Fish? The idea that man came from fish to ape to gish, you don't follow that. You don't buy that.
As a scientist, I find that notion scientifically untenable. The historical record, the fossil record, is absolutely contradictory to that notion. It's remarkably in accord with the concept of creation, as we find each basic type of animal or plant appears in the fossil record suddenly fully formed, without the transitional forms that are required by evolution.
I got a committee of people together who were interested in finding someone who would debate Dr. Gish, and we had a full auditorium, I guess it held 1,700.
Yeah. They turned them away. way.
They turned people away. There was a lot of interest.
Wow.
The debate itself, they're hands down. Dr. Gish actually won the debate. We felt it was very successful in getting out the word that God created the universe and the world that we live in, and the people and animals and vegetables and everything. Sad.
Yeah.
Tearful.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was so different not having her around.
Yeah. That empty nester thing.
Yeah, that's true, huh?
We realized that life has to go on for you girls.
Yeah.
I heard a record because I heard that my dad played the violin, and the record played a beautiful song. I thought about my dad, and just suddenly it occurred to me that I just had to try to find him. I didn't even know if he was dead or alive. I called the Social Security office. All they could do was try to find him, and then it would be up to him to contact me. And a couple days later, I got the most amazing phone call you can imagine. And a male voice said, "Is this Donna Lynn?" And that threw me for a loop. Nobody except my family called me that. I said, "Yes." He said, "This is Elmer Zalberg." And I about fell on the floor. I was amazed. He met me on a corner somewhere so we could be by ourselves at the first. I just was so amazed to meet him. Of course, he had probably made a lot of mistakes, and he admitted it and all that, but so had my mother, I'm sure. And I just felt in wonderment at hugging my dad for the first time. And we did things. I went fishing with him once. We had a wonderful rapport and relationship. At one point, he became ill, and so he passed away. I only knew him for like 3 years. So I expect to see my dad in heaven. In 1995, the Craigs and us went on an Alaskan cruise, and we took a train ride. We went to Denali Park, took a bus in to look at wildlife. That was interesting. We just had a great time.
As it worked out, some of the guys that I used to have coffee with, one of them was in agriculture, and he wanted to do something like what I was doing, so decided to go ahead and buy my business. So that worked out really well.
We had discovered that we liked it there.
Probably within 6 or 8 months, or it was kind of right away.
Right after moving.
That I got pains in my back and my shoulder, and he checked me with that treadmill check and everything, and he says, "Well, tomorrow you're going to go in the hospital." So I guess that was pretty definite, huh? So that's when I had that triple bypass surgery.
Back to Tennessee we moved.
Yeah.
And of course, all this time, Joanne and Merrill Craig remained close friends, even if we were separated by thousands of miles. We often got together and we played Chicken Foot, a game that's kind of popular with us old people. We used to rent a cabin, spend a few days in a cabin by a river or something like that.
One time we went to South Carolina, to Pawleys Island.
When we moved to Knoxville, I worked as band assistants with the Woodwinds, and also did private lessons. And I enjoy that. I really love doing that.
I got to do some handyman stuff. I advertised a little bit, and I got some jobs, and it worked into quite a few jobs, so I was busy most of the week. the house that I was in, the people were there and they were playing some music, and I thought that sounded like a pretty neat choir and everything. And I asked them about it, and they said, "Oh, that's our church." And they told me what church it was, Fair Heights Baptist. Told me where it was, so I told Mom, and she said, "We'll maybe go visit next Sunday." So we did, and boy, we really enjoyed it. And so we thought, "Hey, boy, this is the church for us."
I joined the orchestra.
Yeah.
And after 2 or 3 months, Dad joined it later.
Yeah.
We had a wonderful 50th anniversary. It was a surprise. So we went over to a park. Susan got us busy, and we did some walking, and we were told that we would just go over and visit Joanne and Merrill. We went over, and we got a big surprise when we walked in the door, because everybody said, "Happy anniversary!" Happy anniversary! And we were bowled over because we didn't know this was happening.
Complete surprise. There. Boy, it was great.
Joanne and Merrill's family were there, and our family, and
Well, everybody was there, and all our friends and our family, grandkids, our daughters were there, the instigators of all this trouble. And, and so we had a great time. It was just really something that just so surprised us that we couldn't speak for a while. But that didn't keep us from eating any cake.
No, it sure didn't.
That was so good.
Years ago, they detected esophageal cancer, and Joanne spent a year and a half fighting it. She never got her down. We couldn't get Joanne down, really. We took her some flowers. She came to the door, and we talked a little bit, and we came on home, and the next morning, their daughter, Veda, called me on the phone and said, "Mom's passed away last night." He passed in his sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Robert said he went in the morning and he was gone. So.
A great family that we've been able to be with all these years, and you kids have all enjoyed their kids too.
Yeah. After graduating high school, Sherry Lynn Kerr went into the Air Force, where she met and married Dean Barber in 1986. After giving birth to Christopher Dean Barber in 1989, she was a homemaker and a school bus driver. In 2008, she moved to Knoxville, where she currently works as a web application developer for one of the 11 national science labs that are managed by the Office of Science in the Department of Energy. Christopher Dean Barber graduated from high school in 2008. He then earned his Bachelor of Arts degree in Political Science from the University of Tennessee at Knoxville in 2013. Currently, he is enrolled in the Graduate Studies for City Planning at University of Virginia at Charlottesville, Virginia. He hopes to work for an aspiring city in designing the growth for the city. Susan Marguerite Kerr graduated from Point Loma Nazarene College in 1981. She then graduated from nursing school in 1984. She married Tim Dabney in 1988. They moved to Lompoc, California, where she raised and homeschooled 3 children. Michael Allen Dabney was born April 3, 1989. Their next addition was twins, David Logan and Jonathan Keegan, born August 21, 1990. They were born 9 weeks premature. David has entered the joy of the Lord. He died July 9, 1995, after a valiant effort to overcome the struggles of coming into this world too early. Their last blessing is Kelsey Allison Dabney. She was born May 1st, 1992. Tim was the chief of police in Lompoc, California before retiring, where they still live. After high school, Michael spent 2 years in Bible school in Siegen, Germany, and then 3 years in the Marine Corps. He now lives in Johnson Creek, Wisconsin with his wife Miranda Taylor Dabney. Jonathan is a missionary in Hungary. He and his Hungarian wife Ilona were married October 8, 2016, and have 2 children. Christina Eleanor was born October 19, 2017, and Veronica Grace was born August 30, 2021. Kelsey graduated from junior college in Lompoc, California, and then went to Bible school in Hungary. She returned to the United States to live and work in San Diego, where she met her husband, Steve Ondo. And on May 16, 2021, they were married. They now live in San Diego, California. Catherine Marie Kerr graduated high school in 1980. She attended Point Loma Nazarene College for 2 years as a piano performance major. She married Tom Natsky in 1983 and gave birth to Caleb Joel Natsky on January 18, 1985, and Kyle Thomas Natsky on October 24, 1986. They divorced in 88, then Kathy went back to school to her dream college, the San Francisco Conservatory of Music, and started a nationwide music instruction company. On July 3, 1989, Kathy gave birth to Melody Miller and gave her up for adoption. Later that year, she met Daryl Sakari and his daughter Stacy and got married on December 29, 1990. Stacy Sakari was born July 13, 1981. In 1992, Daryl adopted Caleb and Kyle. Then on February 25, 1999, they had a bonus baby, Samuel Richard Sakari. After becoming empty nesters, Daryl and Kathy moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, where they now live. Daryl continues to work part-time in the home improvement business, and Kathy continues teaching and her business. Stacy Sakari gave birth to Shannon Ball in 2004 and married Jeff Ball in 2006. They later divorced and she remarried John Reinert. They live in Castro Valley, California, and own and operate a wine company called A Brilliant Mistake. Caleb Sakari grew up playing the guitar. He and his brother Kyle Sakari, who grew up playing the drums, started a band called the Melodramatics. After graduating high school, they continued to write their own music, perform, and record. Along with the band, Caleb is also a bartender in Redding, California. Kyle Sakari married Tiffany New on October 23, 2010. Along with playing drums in the band, he became a cake artist and is the owner of Sublime Cake Design in Redding, California. He has won multiple cake artist competitions on the Food Network. In 2007, Kathy had the wonderful surprise of meeting her adopted daughter, Melody Miller. They have stayed in contact ever since. Melody Miller graduated from the Syracuse University in 2011 with a civil engineering degree. She later received her master's in structural engineering in 2013. While at school, she met Ben Forey and they married on August 16, 2014. They have 2 children, Nicholas, born August 3, 2017, and Zachary, born on May 10, 2019. They live outside of Denver, Colorado. Samuel Sakari graduated high school in 2017 and then joined the Coast Guard in 2018. He is engaged to Bree Aldridge and plans to get married when he gets out of the Coast Guard in April 2022. Alida Rose Kerr married Pat Natsky in 1986 and gave birth to Kala Rose Natsky on July 29, 1992. She then gave birth to Patrick Robert Natsky on April 26, 1995. They later divorced, and Alida went back to school to receive a master's and teaching certificate in the public school system. She married Mark Mueller on March 23, 2013. They live in Hot Springs, California, outside of Porterville. Alida continues teaching in the school system. After graduating from college in Seattle, Washington, Calla met Kent Anderson, and they were married in Olympia, Washington on July 29, 2017. They now live in Washington, D.C., where Calla works for an accreditation organization, and Kent works for the League of Conservation Voters. After graduating from high school in Visalia, California, Patrick moved to Ventura, California, where he currently works at a fresh fish market on Ventura Harbor.
We want everyone to know that we feel blessed, and we have a beautiful family, 4 beautiful daughters, and 11 beautiful grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. The Lord has blessed us, and we want to share those blessings with our family and with future generations. We hope that you will all be giving your lives to Christ and let Him bring the happiness that comes from knowing Him. So thank you all for your love. We love you all.
Well, I have to say amen to all that. And I really believe that families can really be okay if they just love each other and hold each other up above and beyond what they want. In other words, be unselfish and do the best you can with what you have. I think everything will be fine in the long run.
Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres.